Welcome back to Game Talk from the Bench. I'm your host, Drew Barretto, and today I'm here with my guest, my Uncle Joe. Today, we got a lot to cover. In the NFL, we have some signings, some veterans going to some prestigious teams, I guess you could say. We have some injury news, big injury news, considering a lot of us play fantasy football. And then, after football, we are going to our new throwback segment, so we'll talk about that when we get there. After that, we'll get into NBA after one of the biggest franchises sold for a record-breaking deal, as well as um what did I talk about? Oh, as well as a legendary guard retirement that came up on us suddenly. And then in MLB's our weekly standings update as we get closer to October. Injury news, injury news updates, as well as who will be hosting the All-Star game in 2028. Also a huge sale of a team that just happened. And then we'll end off in Formula One. But to start us off, Zadarius Smith, 33-year-old veteran, last played last season with the Philadelphia Eagles, was signed a 1-year, $6 million deal, which I think he can make up to $8 million with the Atlanta Falcons. And I think this is a great move, especially when Jalen Walker is out for the year and James Pierce Jr., who had his offseason arrest, is suspended 8 games. And so I think, getting the veteran to hopefully make up some pass rush. Granted, it is the Falcons. They're not going to be the greatest team. Darius Smith isn't the guy who he once was when he was on a team like the Packers and whatnot. But it's better than nothing. Because, they're down to two young edge rushers for, like I said, one of them's out the season. The other one's out at least 8 games. And so just getting the veteran to fill the void and hopefully, keep him in contention with, in a division that's not so uh, can be won by anyone.
Well, exactly, Drew. What you just said. That's why it's a good signing. 'Cause you're going to get the other young guy back in 8 games. So to fill in that void for now, that helps. Um, it's just like you said, it's the Atlanta Falcons. They're not that great, but they do have an offense that can score. So if the quarterback situation goes well for them, they could score. So if they could get something out of Zadarius Smith for getting some sacks, not nothing crazy, but putting pressure at least, would be big for them. And like you said, and that's why I agree with you. It's a division that anyone can win. It could be Tampa Bay, it could be Carolina, it could be New Orleans. We don't know who's going to win that division. It's honestly probably the worst division in the league. I'd say, and that's why I say it because any of those four teams can win it with an 9-8 record.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, he was a once great edge rusher, obviously up there in age. It's just, like I said, they just got to fill the void. They got to fill the void and, just hopefully stay competitive. Speaking of staying competitive, it's the Dallas Cowboys. We talked about their struggles defensively. They go out and they sign future Hall of Famer, in my opinion, which probably will be. We'll get your thoughts. Von Miller, age 37, he's going back home to Dallas. He reached a 1-year contract that's worth $5.5 million with a maximum value of $7.5 million. Once again, Von Miller, you're not gonna get his prime numbers, right? You're not gonna get his 10 plus sacks, but you're hoping he could get you 8. You're hoping he's got a little bit left in the tank, just enough that could get you into the playoffs and add a chance to the Super Bowl. Like I said, they have one of, if not the best offense in the league. Their defense, on the other hand, is probably one of the worst. They're hoping to flip it around. They made some moves. Obviously, they had the draft. Caleb Downs has looked really good in training camp, so they're hoping he's really well or plays really great for them. And so for me, I think Jerry Jones, he's just trying to build the team. He's trying to get the right guys, trying to get the leadership, trying to get the veterans. And I think this is a great move. I think Von Miller always been a great edge rusher, and 8-time Pro Bowler. I mean, like I said, future Hall of Famer in my opinion. I think this is a great time for them, and like I said, hopefully the Cowboys get in the playoffs because quote unquote America's team is hopefully one year will finally be their year.
Hopefully not. But yeah, it's a good signing. If he's not your every down edge rusher, I don't think Von Miller has it like you said, like he used to. Um, my thought process is, I think Atlanta should have signed him as well. Bring both. Have Zadarius Smith and Von Miller. To come in and help out with because you lost both your young guys. one for 8 games, one for the season. Why didn't you sign him too? I mean, he was cheap, but was it a good move by Dallas? We'll see. I don't know if it was. But like you said, Dallas is doing everything they can to help that defense because, like you said, they have possibly the best offense, maybe second best offense in the league. So, with that offense, they could score points. It's just that our defense was just horrible last year. So I understand they're trying to fix it. Like I said, they did in the draft, which is great. Um, but we'll see if it was a good move. I mean, I'm thinking he's only going to play third down, but I don't know. I mean, we'll see what he has left in the tank. I would think it would be smart just to play him every third down, just to keep him healthy for the whole year. But we'll see what they do with him.
Yeah, well, hopefully, yeah, obviously, like you said, I think that's really probably what they want, just him on third down, get him in the pass rush. But, probably they're hoping to maximize whatever they can get out of him. So if they could get more than one down, just third down, they're probably going to go for it. But yeah, like it's the one. It's always wait and see, right? You always gotta wait and see how the season goes, how they're doing. But when you're Dallas and you got that defense, you have nothing to lose when you sign a guy like Von Miller. You're just gonna hope for the best, and when it pays off, it's a small risk or low risk, high reward type of thing, right? It doesn't cost that much, and if you get the impact that you wanted out of him, it's a win for you. And so, truly interesting. What also is interesting is this next signing, Darren Waller. Former Dolphins tight end. He signed him with Carolina. Don't have the exact numbers on the deal, but he signed him with Carolina, probably as like, a roster invite. Hopefully he makes the team. But man, Darren Waller. When I think of Darren Waller, I think of him with the Raiders, man, the tight end that came out of the scene that no one knew about and just dominated. Had multiple 1,000-yard seasons with the Raiders. Then Josh McDaniels came along, kind of ruined it. They shipped him off to New York. Didn't really play much there. Retired, unretired. Was with the Dolphins, I want to say the last season or two, and now he's trying to end up in Carolina. And I think he's got a pretty good shot. I'm not familiar with their tight end depth, but he's a big body tight end. He can move like a receiver. I think he could be a great option for Bryce Young. And yeah, that's just a little last time that we'll talk about.
Yeah, if he's still got it, I mean, I don't know if Darren Waller still got it. I mean, the only thing that I really know about him is he's just a big body. I mean, like you said, he was great on the Raiders. That's where I know him from. I don't know anything that he did in New York or Miami. I don't think he really did much over there. Um, because like you said, he had 1,000 yards receiving over there in Oakland. So I mean, it was great for him. And then he got ruined, and it happens to a lot of players, that get ruined by certain coaches because certain coaches do something differently, and then it doesn't work out for the player, and it ruins the player, and it's too bad for him because he was a great talented tight end. At one point probably a top 5, top 10 tight end in the league when he was doing really good. So it's sad to see him do so horrible. But you know what? Maybe like you said, a change of scenery in Carolina help him, help that young quarterback out if he can make the team. I don't know their tight end situation as well. Um, but we'll see what he does out there. I see him making the team. Like you said, he's a big body, great talent. So he is older now, obviously. But it would be great to have that veteran tight end to throw to.
Yeah, guy with experience. He's got a great story. Went from overcoming his drugs and his alcohol to like you said, being a top 5, 10 tight end in the league at one point. Then he had his struggles. Now he's looking to get back in. Now, moving on to our fantasy football news, which is when I say that is just injury news. Starting with Brees Hall, he's dealing with a groin injury. He is expected to be ready for the Jets Week 1 game versus Titans. However, that's precautionary. Says he'll be out 2 to 3 weeks to this injury. Obviously a lot of fantasy people want to start Week 1 with a win, and I know some people already have their draft, which I think it's dumb to have your draft like at the beginning of August, end of July, beginning of August. If you're having an NFL draft, it's the dumbest thing ever. Training camp still isn't over. I like to have my draft the week before the season starts, so you know who's playing, well, not know who's playing, but you know who's injured and who is not injured, because it seems like every day more and more injuries come out, and so I know for me, Brees Hall is a guy who, he's a pretty good, solid fantasy football performer, but, groin injury, those things could linger more than anticipated. So him being, expected to play, it's a little concerning, especially with the season not too far away.
Yeah, especially Brees Hall is the Jets' only talented offensive weapon that I know of. So you know it's hard because like you said, they're gonna throw him the ball. They're gonna use like how the Niners use McCaffrey. They're gonna use him all the time. So him being that this growing, it could be very bad. It could be more than 2 to 3 weeks. They're saying that, but it could be 4 to 6 weeks. A groin is something that you don't want to mess with, and it could get re-injured if he comes back too soon. So, and like you said, for fantasy owners, it's a risk taking Brees Hall. I mean, am I going to take him my first, second pick? No, I'm not taking him. That's for sure. I'll tell you that much. Because I'm not going to risk it. Where there's other running backs that are going to be willing to take in those first 2 rounds. So I agree with you, and it's just something that you got to be careful with and very cautious with because you're growing.
Yeah, speaking of, lingering injuries like the groin, Jordan Tyson, the Saints' first round pick, his eighth overall pick in April's draft, he suffered a hamstring injury. He's to miss roughly 2 months with this hamstring injury, and that's brutal. I know a lot of people were high on him on fantasy, right? Eighth pick of the draft, you obviously have high expectations. His counterpart, Chris Olave, they'd have been a great 1-2 punch. Now Tyson's out 2 months. I feel bad for people who drafted him because that's at least, what, 8 fantasy football games? It's just brutal. Brutal. Hamstring injuries is kind of like a groin injury where it kind of just how your body responds. It could say 2 months. He could be out longer. He could potentially be out shorter than 2 months. But yes, brutal injuries to just the Saints in general. Tyler Shuck, their quarterback, had like I said, he was trending upwards towards the end of last season. And they get him this weapon, and they're expecting him week one. Now he's not going to play for the first 2 months. That's just a brutal blow. They're hoping Chris Olave can stay healthy. Obviously, they brought in Travis Etienne, and they have Alvin Kamara, so he's got help there. But that's just not something that as a team, you're expecting, your first round pick to be healthy, and it's just unfortunate news for the Saints and Tyler Shuck.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it could be longer than 2 months. It could be 3 months. A hamstring, receiver he's gonna get hit. The ball's gonna get thrown. He's got to run. He's got to run down the field. He's got to hustle. He's got to block. A lot of things go into it where the receiver's got to do a lot where it could affect the hamstring. And not all players are like this, but if players know that you got to hurt hamstring, some players do go for it, and it sucks saying that, but it's true. It's just if the injury report says it, not all players do because they are, they're part of a union, but some of them, want to win more than others, and sometimes they'll go after that hamstring in. So it's a big hit for the young quarterback. My guess is that you're going to have your 1-2 punch with your running backs and possibly put one of them in the slot.
Yeah, I know both Etienne and Kamara, they could catch the ball, they could run out of the backfield and run routes. So that's it's just a great option for them. So that most likely can happen, especially if you want your best players on the field. And so obviously they're gonna want both Etienne and Kamara on the field at the same time. So definitely one of them could be in the slot and work out from there. Speaking and staying with receivers, we'll go to George Kittle on the Niners. He tore his Achilles in their playoff game against Philadelphia. Correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, right? Um,
Yep.
and so, Achilles injury, it's usually a long time frame, right? They say, 6 to 8 months. Is he going to be back for the season? Oh, well, he will be back for the season, but the Niners, they're hopeful that he has a chance to face the Rams in week one in Australia. Now, that is huge, right? We know George Kittle, well, obviously, when he's healthy, he's one of the better tight ends in the NFL. Brock Purdy is a guy he'll rely on, right? They brought in Mike Evans. They have their first round pick, Deshaun Sterling.
Stripling.
Stripling. He showed some flashes, right? Obviously CMC was dealing with a little bit of an injury as of recent, but you want your star tight end. However, I think they got to be cautious because you don't want him to be injured. You want him to stay healthy. If he's not ready to go week one, I don't think you go out there and put him out there. I know it's week one. Everyone wants to win. It's against the Rams, the season opener, but you can't risk losing your tight end for longer. than he would already be out for. I mean, he's 32. He's kind of getting up there in age. So I think, if he's ready to go and, all signs point good, you let him go out there. But if there's just a slight bit of concern, I say you hold him out because you're just going to, like I said, you want him for the whole as much as you can, not, out for any more.
Yeah, this is a big one for me as a Niner fan. I'd sit him. Me personally, if I was a coach, I'd sit him, even if he told me he was ready. That's just him wanting to play. Him being that football player that player that he is. He's a beast. He's a when he's healthy and he's doing good and he's got that quarterback, he's a top five tight end. And the reason why he's a top five tight end is because he blocks. And does he block well? He pancakes D ends. He pancakes linebackers, safeties. I mean, he goes all out. So for me, with the Achilles, the most important tendon in your body, in my opinion, I'd hold him out for. I know this is going to be bad to say, but I'd hold him out for an extra month. Just because you need that tight end. You're going to need him if you go 2-2 in that first month, you're going to need him down the stretch, like you said. If you're supposedly trying to make the playoffs, make this push, to a Super Bowl. I mean, you need him for the playoffs. So for me, like you said, Christian McCaffrey dealing with some we just discussed a hamstring. So we don't know what's going on with him if when he's going to come back. So it's just a big deal. You know, uh, having him on that left side with Big Trent over there. They just pancake people left and right. So for me, I would hold him out. It's a big deal to me, and I hope that they do the right thing and don't push him because if he re-injures that or just injures something else because he's pushing his legs or whatever, and then now he's out for a while. So I hope that doesn't happen. So I really hope that they just do the right thing and hold him out.
Yeah, you got it. Like you said, that you make great points. Like you said, he blocks really well. We've seen it all the time. He probably gets almost a post a week just on his blocking. And like you said, you want him down the stretch, right? If they go 2-2 in those first four games, that's great. But it's another thing for fantasy owners, right? He's coming back from the Achilles. You know what he can do. Last year, he was pretty solid when he played. He was a really solid tight end, especially for fantasy, averaging probably I believe around 10 points or whatnot. And so, fantasy owners, they got to be cautious. He might be out week one, but he could be a guy that you find later rounds. And if he's there, might as well snag him because you could put him at, he could either be your starter, he could be your flex. But yeah, George Kittle, he's a gamer and he's going to want to play. So he's probably going to get out there as much as he can. But I just hope, like I said, I hope if he's not 100% week one, you don't play him. So we'll see how that is. Going to our last injury slash fantasy football news, it's Jeremiah Love, the first round, the third overall pick for the Cardinals. He suffered a high ankle sprain in the preseason game against the Raiders. He is out. I mean, he's gonna be out the rest of the preseason. Um, he's gonna be out, I believe, 2 to 3 weeks. They're hoping he's back for the home opener. But then again, high ankle sprains. Those are things that can linger. Those are things that if it's not fully healed and you start playing on it, it's gonna affect you for longer. And so it's another one of those things where Jeremiah Love is going to be probably a highly picked guy in fantasy football just because the Cardinals don't have much. He's the number 3 overall pick. He put up great numbers at Notre Dame. Cardinals are going to probably rely on him heavily, and so he's going to be a great fantasy football player. But you got to be cautious because if this ankle is lingering, then it's going to hinder his performance and potentially put him on the IL at some point in the season.
Yeah, it's another like it's just like we were just discussing. The high ankle sprain it can affect you. And George, like us we were talking about going in the trenches. Well, those big guys in those trenches, they're coming after that running back, and they're gonna grab them and however they can. They don't care how they tackle you. Their job is to tackle you. You're the guy with the ball. Shoot, I mean, I don't know, 50% of the time, if not more, depending on what your coach is calling. Um, so it's a big deal, and for me, like I know you said that they want to play him week one, but if I was a coach, I wouldn't play him week one. I'd wait a couple games. Make sure that he's like you said, because that's all they really got. And I mean, I know they have the McBride, but I mean, he's young. I mean, you don't want to hurt him, and then he's out for the season. I mean, he could break his ankle, crack his ankle, and anything can happen. So for me, I just wait a couple games to play them. Maybe week 3 to play them, and for fantasy that have owners, I would draft them. Maybe not as high as I would have before, but I'd still pick them. Maybe round 3 or 4, because like you said, if as long as they don't play them week 1, for me, if they play them week 1, I don't think I draft them that high.
And if you already drafted him, you better hope he plays week 1 because I know everyone wants that week 1 win. But that is all that we have for NFL. Before we move on to the NBA, we got a new segment. I've been wanting to throw in a new segment, and so it's going to be a little bit of a throwback segment. So come join me for Drew's Deep Dive. On this day in history, back in 2000, I'm gonna have you guess this guy. You might know him. Everyone knows him. This is a player stood at 11 under par through just 36 holes, tying the lowest 2 round score in PGA Championship history. Any guesses?
The only guess I could guess would be Tiger.
And Tiger Woods it was. At the peak of his dominance. Now, early that summer, now granted, I'm not a golf guy, but this was huge in history. Now, early that summer, Tiger won the U.S. Open by 15 strokes and the Open Championship by 8. People thought that this would be another blowout, but an underdog named Bob May went toe-to-toe with him on Sunday. They both shot a ridiculous 5 under 31 on the back nine, forcing a 3-hole playoff. And that playoff gave us one of the most famous clips in golf history. Tiger chasing down a 20-foot birdie putt on the 16th hole, pointing at the cup before the ball even dropped. Tiger pulled off the win, making him the first golfer since Ben Hogan in 1953 to win 3 majors in a single calendar year. The question for you guys listening is 2000's Tiger Woods the most dominant single season athlete we've ever seen in sports history, or does someone else take that crown? Now, I'm not a golf guy, but it is very impressive what Tiger Woods has done. 2000s is one of his, most spectacular years. Granted, there has been, a lot of great years in other sports, but winning 3 of the biggest majors in golf is it's a tough thing to do. I don't know, Joe, if you have any other seasons that could compare.
For just golf or just in general, any sport?
I think just in general.
So in general, it's hard to say because golf is just a single man game. Um, so for me, it's hard to say. I could go back to the Yankees winning the three-peat. That's not easy. The Lakers winning a three-peat in 2000, 2003. Jordan's Bulls a three-peat. We can go back to the Oakland Athletics winning in the 70s. And the hardest times to win. At that time. So it's hard for me to say because those are team sports, and it's just a one man show. Um, so for me, I don't think that was probably the greatest ever or at that time because, like I said, the Lakers were doing something very impressive that time going on. The Yankees were doing something very impressive, and I don't think I would give it to Tiger, but I definitely hands down. I mean, shoot, for a single person, if we're talking about just golf or maybe tennis. I mean, it's still kind of hard because I know Rafael Nadal and I can't think of Roger Federer were doing big things back then too. So, um, it's hard for me, but winning 3 major championships for Tiger is something that's just unbelievable. So I have to give credit when credit's due. I just don't think it was more impressive than certain other athletes in sports that than other things.
All right, I like it. Yeah, there's a very impressive season. Maybe we'll come back to it next week. But that will be a new segment that we'll have every week. So next week we'll get a new throwback and I will give a deep dive on it. But moving us on to NBA. Actually, before that, give us your thoughts if you like it. Let me know. We could tweak things. But moving on to NBA. The Los Angeles Lakers are being sold to Josh Kushner and Bob Iger. Bob Iger, former Disney CEO, at a record-breaking $12.5 billion valuation. While majority owner Mark Walter has agreed to sell his stake, a bitter Buss family feud has erupted. Yeah, so Lakers, man, $12.5 billion. That is crazy, big time money. Obviously, a historical franchise, right? 17 NBA championships. It's no, it's a no, not a no-brainer, but it's obviously I'm like blanking on my words, but you could see why they're worth $12.5 billion. And so unfortunately for the Buss family, I know Jeannie Buss, she was heavily involved with the team, and I believe she was outvoted 5-1 on selling the team. And so, unfortunate news for her, but we know the Lakers, they're still going to have money. They're always going to have money to spend. They're going to be a competitive team, right? We saw them dish out a lot of money in this offseason. And so, but yeah, it's just huge, like I said, historic franchise. Don't see them sold that often.
No, and it's funny because they just got sold in back-to-back seasons. Me and my buddy were talking about that because I didn't know that the guy that sold them, he bought his shares for 11.5 billion, and now he just sold them for 12.5 billion. So he just made $1 billion in 1 year. Imagine making $1 billion in 1 year in profit. Now I know it cost you 11.5 billion, but he made $1 billion profit. It's like, wow, that's just unbelievable. In one year, one calendar year, this guy made $1 billion. That's just amazing. Um, but in general, I mean, like you said, I mean, and this is him making the $1 billion when LeBron leaves. LeBron's not even there. So,
Yeah.
we discussed that, how this guy made $1 billion and LeBron left. So you think, oh, they're probably going to get devalued. No, Disney came in and you know what? Let's just spend the money because, and like you said, they're a team that have been around for a long time, won lots of championships. So of course, like you said, the Disney CEO, he's gonna spend money. Why wouldn't he? He's got money. All those Marvel movies and everything that he's doing. So, I mean, the Lakers, if not, might be better.
Yeah, no, they're definitely gonna have a lot of money. Obviously, there's the first apron, the second apron, things that hinder them. It's not like baseball where you could spend unlimited money, although that might change next year. Yeah, but yeah, just I'm just trying to remember. Obviously, I'm just trying to remember when a team like the Lakers, like I don't know if when the Celtics were last sold. I know the Seahawks were just sold. A lot of football teams were sold. I know the Broncos were just sold. But yeah, it's crazy, how much these sports teams are worth. It's just absolutely crazy, crazy money. But before we end off on NBA, I missed this last week, and I can't believe I missed it. But it's Russell Westbrook. He retired after 18 seasons, I believe. Yeah, 18 seasons. He hung it up. I know he had offers from the Wizards and the Kings, and I know those aren't two of the best teams, but he ended up hanging it up, and it's like one of the dominoes falling, right? There's that famous picture with Chris Paul, Russell Westbrook, Steph Curry, John Wall, and Derrick Rose, and now all of those guys except Steph Curry has now retired, and it's kind of coming like to an end of an era. Russell Westbrook is a guy I grew up watching. I watched his Thunder face off against Curry and the Warriors. I mean, it was just crazy. I mean, this guy, he's got accolades. He was the 2016, 2017, or he was a one-time NBA MVP. He averaged 31.6 points per game, 10.7 rebounds, and a 10.4 assist in his iconic MVP season. He's first all time in career triple doubles with 209. He scored 27,176 points, which is 14th all time. His 10,351 assists is fifth all time, and he's top 20 when it comes to steals all time. And it's just he's 9-time All Star, 2-time All Star Game MVP, 9-time All NBAs. He was the NBA 75th anniversary team, won an Olympic gold medal. He's won scoring champions, NBA assist leaders. I mean, he's put his name in history, and you know, a guy that was just once just a threat at anything he did. Obviously, his later years wasn't the same player, but at his prime, he was a fun player to watch.
Yeah, he was a great player. I don't think he won a championship though, right? Or did
He
he?
didn't. He fell short. Steph Curry and the Warriors had that 3-1 comeback against them in 2016. Obviously, the Warriors ended up blowing their 3-1 lead, but no, Russell Westbrook didn't get his championship.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean it's sad to say, but hearing what you said about all his stats, I mean he's definitely probably gonna get into the Hall of Fame. Maybe I would think a first time ballot, he should be there. I'm not sure if he will, but he probably will. He's up there with guys who never won a championship. Carl Malone.
Barkley.
Charles Barkley. So those guys, had incredible talents. One of the best at their positions, and he also did the same thing. Like you said, I mean, one player to average 30 points, 10 rebounds, and 10 assists a game. So per game, I mean, that's just ridiculous. The only other player that I could think of that was close to that was in his prime that had injury prone who fell off because of injuries was Grant Hill, and he would have done it too, but he just like I said, it was injuries and it killed him, and he was went down. But congratulations, Russ Westbrook. I would have retired too. I wouldn't have played for the Queens or the Wizards. So I'm just happy for him, and he deserves everything he deserves, and I think he should be a first time ballot Hall of Famer.
Yeah, no, he definitely deserves his flowers. He did his job in the league. You think he deserves a statue anywhere? You think OKC gives him one?
No, he doesn't deserve a statue.
All
Not that
right,
good.
just that I'd ask. But yeah, so Russell Westbrook, enjoy retirement. You deserve it. You left your mark on the league. And hopefully we get a player similar to him. But moving on to the MLB, we got our weekly standings update. In the AL East, the Rays, man, they have just been so impressive. They extended their lead over the Yankees. They have a 6-game lead. They're at 75 wins. Um, the White Sox, they have a 4.5-game lead over the Tigers for first place in the American League Central, and the Astros have a 2-game lead over the Rangers for first place in the AL West. In the National League, Braves are at 74 and 51. They have a 6.5-game lead over the Phillies. Brewers' best record in baseball, 77 and 48. They took 3 out of 4 from the Dodgers. They are 4.5 games up from the Cubs, who are at 73 wins. The Dodgers are 75 and 51. They have struggled as of late. They are playing the Rockets right now, so they're getting some free wins. They have an 8-game lead over the Padres, who are 67 and 59. Now, going to our injury news. Uh, Interesting situation for the Diamondbacks, who are in the playoff hunt. Ketel Marte traveled with the team to Boston. However, didn't play. He failed to show up at Fenway Park for their game yesterday, Monday, against the Red Sox, and then he was placed on the restricted list. There was no note of his information. However, Tony Lovello said that he returned to Phoenix for an MRI on his knee, which, like I said, strange situation, right? He shows he's with the team in Boston, doesn't show up at the game, and then he's back at Phoenix with the MRI on his knee. Not a good look for one. Two, if that MRI shows up bad, that's even worse news for the Diamondbacks because these are going to be one of the best second basemen in all of baseball.
Yeah, I mean, it would be bad for that MRI to come back and it's a positive thing where they say, hey, he tore something or he strained something or whatever. I mean, it'd be bad because, like you said, he's having a great year. Diamondbacks are actually trying to stay close to the Dodgers, which is hard to do with the Dodgers payroll, and they're right there. They're not close, but they're close enough where they could possibly make the playoffs. So it would be a big injury news to them. So hopefully, we don't know what's going on behind scenes, behind doors, because that we're not those guys. But not even the big guys don't even know what's going on. It's only mainly they're keeping that in between the teams. So we'll see what happens. We're not sure what's going to happen, but hopefully good news comes out of this.
Yeah, so sticking, you talked about the Dodgers. Sticking with the Dodgers, Edwin Diaz, one of their big offseason signings, has struggled a lot this year. He was on the 60-day IL for quite some time. Came back, struggled heavily, had a couple blown saves, and now he's back on the IL with neck inflammation. So the brutal season for Edwin Diaz just continues. And I know Dodger fans aren't happy with him. They're not happy with Justin Tucker. Um, but when you have all the money, you can buy whoever you want, and it's just like I said, it's tough for the 32-year-old who had a 1.63 ERA with 28 saves last season for the Mets, and he signed a 3-year, $69 million deal this offseason with the Dodgers, and it has just not worked out whatsoever for the Dodgers, and he struggled a lot.
Yeah, he has, and it's sad. But this happens when you have a lot of money and then you spend it. You know what I mean? Um, that's what the Dodgers are trying to do. They're trying to buy championships right now. They're trying to pay for Otani's contract, and you know what? They're already done it. Like me and my buddy talked about. They made $1 billion profit last year, and they're projecting to make $1 billion profit this year. We just discussed it. $1 billion is a lot of money. So, you know what? If they're already going to make it again this year, they already paid off Otani. But they want to keep winning because they're going to pay Otani down the line, so they want to have a winning, championship keep going, down the line, and they're going for a three-peat this year. So I know that's why they spend, especially this year, they spend the money because they want that three-peat. It hasn't been done, like I discussed earlier, since I want to say the New York Yankees. So we'll see what happens. And all I could say right now, and I hate saying it because I'm a diehard Bay Area fan, it kills me to say this, but what a great day right now to be an LA fan. And I'm talking about the LA Rams. Hey, look at the LA Chargers, LA Dodgers, LA Kings.
Don't look at the Angels.
Don't look at the Angels. That's the one team right now that's not doing good, and the Clippers. But other than that, look at the Rams. It's just LA is a great team, great fan to be right now. I can't say enough. All of those teams are trying to win right now.
Yeah, sticking with the Dodgers, I almost forgot to bring it up, but Mark Walters, so he was also part owner of the Lakers. He sold his stake. I'm pretty sure he sold or he's out part of his owner of the Dodgers. I don't know if he sold part of that, because he's dealing with federal loan fraud and financial disclosure investigation. So he's out as I believe his role both as the Lakers. Like I said, he sold his stake, and I believe the Dodgers. And funny enough, for whatever reason, in Shohei Ohtani's contract, if either him or I believe their GM, Andrew Friedman, I might be wrong about that, ever left the organization, Ohtani could opt out of his contract. Granted, Ohtani's not going to opt out of his contract, but never say never. If you wanted to, join somewhere else but no, Ohtani's probably going to stay. But yeah, so Dodgers they could just buy whoever they want. And if they don't struggle, they'll just try to replace them next season with buying more people. But staying in the division, we're going to go to the Padres first. They had a sale as of recent. The Seidler-led group who bought the Padres for $800 million in 2012 just sold them for $3.9 billion to Jose E. Feliciano and Kwanzaa Jones as the new majority owners of the Padres. And that sale beat the previous record which was once $2.4 billion that Steve Cohen paid for the New York Mets. Peter Seidler, the once owner of the Padres, sadly passed away. He invested a lot into the team. They were a playoff team. He was, a big fan of the Padres, and unfortunately he passed away. His brothers that took over just didn't have that same love for the game that he did. And now they sold him to, like I said, a lot of money. And hopefully the new owners can keep the Padres in contention, give them money, give them something to compete with the Dodgers so we don't see the Dodgers continuously repeating.
Yeah, if you're spending 3.9 billion, I would think that you're going to spend some money to try to earn that back. So you want to get players that, because you want to win, you want to compete, you want to sell a lot of tickets, you want to put fans in the stands, because that's how they make their money back. So, and the second thing is you got to win. You got to win, and it ain't easy with the Dodgers right ahead of you, like you just discussed. Or we just discussed, it's not easy when the Dodgers are just spending money left and right. And all the power to them. When you got the money, spend it. The Giants have the money; they could be spending more money. And what I mean by that is that why haven't they, gone on and got pitching? We'll have a pitching stadium, but you went and got bats, which is great. I'm not against it, but it didn't work out. So go and spend some money on some pitchers now. Unload those contracts. And go do something. And we'll see what the Padres owner does. It might take a year or two for him to spend some money, because he might be a little broke because he just spent 3.9 billion. But you know what? Like you said, hopefully they spend some money, in the near future to compete with the Dodgers.
Yeah, and before we move out of the NL West, we'll go to the Giants, who just talked about the San Francisco Giants at Oracle Park will host the 2028 Major League Baseball All-Star Game. When I saw that news, I immediately told myself, I gotta go. In the Bay Area, I think it'll be, great event. Beautiful, one of the best ballparks all of baseball. I was just at Petco Park last week for a Padres game. Beautiful stadium. That and Oracle, I believe they're interchangeable at 1 and 2 for best ballparks in baseball. But yeah, I think it's awesome that the Midsummer Classic is coming down to the Bay. I think it'll be a great time. Um, and it should be a blast. I'm definitely gonna try to make it out there. It should be a great weekend.
Yeah, I'm thinking about joining you because that'd be definitely fun to go to. Like you said, I mean, I know I'm biased, and it is what it is, but it definitely is probably the best ballpark in all of baseball. I mean, you got the view of the bay. It's just great. You can any seat in that place is a great seat to have. Right where they have the stadium, it's just there's a lot to do right there. Right there off of Embarcadero, so it's a nice place to be, and the Warrior Stadium's right down the street from right there too, and that's another beautiful stadium, probably the best stadium in basketball as well. So that's going to be fun to go to. There's going to be a lot of fans there. There's going to be a lot of fans from different cities. So it would definitely be a lot of fun. It's always a great experience out there. So an All-Star game would just be even more better. Have a better fun time. Just to have fun and just maybe I'll take my son.
Yeah, hopefully, that's in 2 years from now. So hopefully the Giants are better by then and have a couple more All-Stars. But yeah, that should be a great time. But sticking in baseball, um, we'll start with Pete Crow-Armstrong. He makes Cubs history with his second straight 30-30 season. 30 home runs, 30 stolen bases. He's just incredible. He's just uh, he's unbelievable. He's having an MVP type of season. Potentially could take it from Shohei Ohtani. We'll see. We know Shohei hasn't pitched as of recently. He's dealing with injury, but this kid, man, he's just been even since last year, just been a disturbance to the league. He's got the speed, he's got the power, he's a great center fielder. I mean, he's just unbelievable. He's all over the field, and man, is he's a fun player to watch.
Yeah, when I think of a player like that, I'm hoping he can hit it. Hoping he can hit 40 home runs and 40 stolen bases. Because when I think of a player like that, and I know he's nothing close to him, because in my opinion, the greatest baseball player of all time. But I think of Barry Bonds. When Barry Bonds, has all these stolen bases and all these home runs, and you know what, and he was a great left fielder. Okay defensively, nothing compared to this guy who's a great center fielder. I mean, he's just great. Like I say, he's fast. He's got power. And that's what I think about that where his potential can be. I don't think he'll be Barry Bonds, but just him just stealing these bases, and hitting home runs. That's what I think about. And when I've been doing the research, I'm like, man, that's the first player I think about. And like I said, I know he's no Barry Bonds. And I know there's an error with the HGH, and people could say all they want, but before Barry Bonds even did that, he had 300 home runs and 300 stolen bases. He had 400 home runs and 400 stolen bases, and 500 home runs and 500 stolen bases, and no one's ever going to do that. Maybe this kid can do something like that. So we'll see. I'm just happy to see that that this kid's doing good, and I wish him the luck and hope he keeps playing the way he's playing because he's a great baseball player.
Yeah, you said you hope he hits 40 home runs, 40 stolen bases. And when you said that, a player who popped in my mind was Ronald Acuna Jr. Because I know a couple of years ago he hit for 40 home runs and 70 stolen bases. And so, yeah, it's incredible. You see all these, double, I guess, type, seasons, his home runs, stolen bases. I mean, it's just crazy. Like Shohei Ohtani, he had his 50 home runs, 50 stolen bases. And so, his stolen bases are an underrated part of the game. And I think, like I said, they're really great. Especially for a guy like Pete Crow, who just constantly stealing them. But home runs are just better. Sticking with home runs, we'll move on to this rookie, Joshua Baez. He had a 3-run home performance in his debut. His first 3 MLB at-bats all resulted in a home run. I mean, it was unbelievable when he hit his first one off the first pitch he saw. Then I saw, okay, second at bat, he hit the second one. Then I saw he went 3 for 3, and I was just like, wow, that's that's some debut. I mean, that it's not easy to hit a home run.
It's
But to hit
history.
three, Yeah, it's history. To hit three in your first three at bats, I mean, it's unbelievable. This article I'm on says where does his three home run performance fit in baseball history? Well, they compared it to Bumpus Jones from the Reds, who he threw a no hitter in his MLB debut back in 1892. They have Willie McCovey for the Giants in 1959. He went 4 for 4 with the double, two triples, two RBIs. They have Juan Marshall with the Giants. He was the second pitcher to throw no hitter in his debut. So a lot of like crazy, stat lines, but three home runs, three at bats. That's just unheard of.
Well, that's why it's history because it's never been done. I'm pretty positive if I read correctly, this has never been done. So for a debut to hit three home runs in your first three at bats is just history. So we'll see what he does the rest of the year, but he's in the history books. That's all we could say is that he's there. He's there with some of these players like you just mentioned. So it's unbelievable. I mean, I'm still in shock that he hit three home runs in his first three at bats. But it happened, and it's a cool thing. It's a good thing for baseball right now. Something just a little different. Because like I said, all they talk about is the Dodgers and Otani. And like you said earlier, I'm hoping that Cubs center fielder steals that MVP from Otani because the way he's playing, he deserves it. So, but going back to this kid right now, I mean, 3 for 3 and three home runs. I mean, all I can say is that's Major League Baseball history, and congratulations.
Yeah, that was like I said. I kept seeing it. He popped up once, he popped up twice, and I saw the third time. I was like, get out of here. That's just like I said. You never seen it. You never hear of it. I'm looking at all the other debut stat lines. They're all pitching. They're all like pitchers going at least seven, striking out 10 plus. Then you see his name. He's 3 for 4, three home runs. I mean, it's just crazy. But before we end off with MLB, we got a little bit of pitcher injury news. I almost forgot to bring him up, but both. Well, Hunter Green, he's set to miss the rest of the entire or this season and the entire 2027 season with Tommy John. And Max Fried is back on the IL. Brutal for him as he just came back. He's having a pretty solid year with the Yankees. But he's got bone bruise in his pitching elbow, and that's never a good thing. So hopefully they can get him back for the postseason. We won't talk about that too much, but just some injury news up there for you guys. Now, before we end off, we'll end off at Formula One. The summer long break is over. We have racing this weekend. I'm excited. There's a sprint, there's a race. We're in Zandvoort. It's the Dutch Grand Prix. It's Max Verstappen's home Grand Prix. Should be a good one. Kimi Antonelli still leads. Lewis Hamilton is second in the standings, so we'll see how the second half of the season goes. Will other teams compete with Mercedes? We'll find out starting this weekend. But that is all for today. Thank you all for tuning in. I'd like to thank my Uncle Joe, for joining me today. Let me know what you guys think of the new segment. I'm hoping to just do it every week. It's always good to just remember crazy stats, events that happen in the sports world. I know there's a couple that happened on this day. I was like, okay, I got to save them for maybe future years. So I just thought Tigers, we don't talk golf. I thought it was just a great chance to bring up an ultimate legend in the sports world. So that was fantastic. But once again, episodes every Wednesday on YouTube and Spotify, post out on Instagram and YouTube. Thank you all for tuning in, and until next time, stay ready.